Hi, my name is Nicole Cadle. I will be presenting on question 1 and the bonus question for the case study on BRICS district government. Question 1 asks, what are the assertions at the transaction level that you, as the auditor, have identified in understanding of BRICS district government? Assertions apply to individual procurement transactions such as requisitions, POs, receipts, invoices, payments, and biddings. As an auditor, the key transaction level assertion identified in understanding of BRICS district government are 1. Occurrence, 2. Completeness, accuracy, timing, and classifications. All 5 met the transaction level test. So, occurrence is whether it can be determined that a transaction has occurred. According to BRICS district government procurement policies, payments at each level, which are less than 10,000, between 10,000 and 88,300, and over 10,000, documentation such as requisitions, POs, and invoices are the source documents that prove a particular transaction has occurred or the existence of a contract. As an auditor, I would be looking for POs, invoices, signed reports that items were received and stamped, and ensure that vendors exist. Completeness. Completeness ensures the recording of all procurement transactions. The process must include all required steps such as quotes, requisition, POs, receipts, invoice, and payment. It also ensures that all purchases made are recorded and transactions are not omitted. As auditor, I only need to verify documents and look for unrecorded liabilities that were not invoiced. Accuracy. Accuracy is whether transactions are accurately recorded in terms of amount, quantity, and calculation. Based on BRICS policy, the required documents assist in determining and cross-referencing POs are invoice amounts. As auditors, you can verify quantity received against quantity on the invoice. Timing. Timing is whether transactions are recorded in the correct accounting period or on the day they took place. BRICS policy incorporates a 2 weeks timeline on purchases under 10,000 and steps occurring in the right order such as quotation, requisition, PO, invoice, and payment, along with date on quotation and receiving report, aid in assessing the time of transactions. Classification refers to the proper coding or the use of UDATs or accounting key, proper classification in accordance with the procurement policy. According to BRICS purchasing policies, all transactions must be classified correctly in procurement records and general ledger. As auditor, I can verify that transactions are recorded in the correct expense account or capital account and ensure that procurement thresholds are correctly applied. At an auditor's standpoint, I can assert that management's policies ensures the adherence to internal control requirements and standards, as the existing policies and procedures stated in the case study clearly identify segregation of duties and responsibilities and incorporates the mitigation of risk and potential threats to the procurement process at different purchasing levels. For example, purchases over 88,300 goes through a bidding process in the vendor selection, which aids in the prevention of possible favoritism or bias. Or purchases between 10,000 and 88,300 requires a minimum of 3 quotations. Transaction level assertions of occurrence, completeness, accuracy, timing, and classifications are identified based on management's policy. However, we'll need testing and compliance audit to determine if the proper classifications of accounting keys are applied to purchases and if proper recording of time is utilized.
What are the assertions at the account balance level that you have identified in understanding of BRICS district government? The answer that I came up with is there is a high risk of material misstatement at the account balance level, primarily due to concerns over the valuation, legitimacy, and transparency of the contracts awarded. I will now go into the different assertions that I came up with. The first one is existence and occurrence, also completeness. There is an assertion that public works contracts exist and have been recorded due to the media highlighting the questionable contracts awarded to sketchy businesses at a questionable value by public works. These questions were raised as to whether all significant contracts, particularly questionable ones, are fully and transparently accounted for in the official records and public domain. The other assertion I came up with is valuation and allocation. This is a primary assertion and it's about the questionable value of the contracts. This points toward a concern that the recorded contract values may not reflect fair value, appropriate allocation of public funds, or value for money. This would indicate potential misstatements or over evaluations. The other is rights and obligations. There are assertions about the authenticity of the very sketchy businesses receiving public funds. So this then creates concerns about whether the contracts create legitimate obligations for the government to pay these entities, or if the rights to the funds were inappropriately granted. Accuracy is the other one. The news media raises questions about the accuracy of the financial reporting, indicating that the account balances may be misstated, and this would be due to fraud, error, or non-compliance with the detailed procurement policy that the BRICS district government has. The final one is presentation and disclosure. This is because a call for an audit by the BRICS Senate is being done. This then directly relates to assertions about the appropriate presentation and disclosure of the contracts in the financial statements and public reports. The leaked documents to the media shows a lack of transparency and proper disclosure. So then the audit is intended to address this issue.
What are the possible fraud factors that may have allowed for the contracts identified by the news media, to have been approved? So I identified 5 risks. The first one is, although there is a competitive bidding process, there is a possibility that the bidding process may have been bypassed. So instead of it being one large contract awarded to a bidder put up through the bidding process, it may have been broken down into smaller projects or smaller purchases to directly award the work to a sketchy business without public scrutiny or fair competition. The second risk identified, the policy states that the purchase of materials should be from vendors who offer the best price and consistent with quality, which requires that the vendor is to be vetted or assessed in some manner to ensure said quality. So the fact that the news media called the businesses very sketchy indicates that there may have been weak or no vendor vetting or due diligence done in regards to the vendors. The third one is that the policy also states that quality will not be sacrificed solely for low cost, but the criteria for that quality, delivery, and service were not quantified nor documented in the policy. So there is a possibility that the persons or the team evaluating the vendors and their offers were subjective in their assessment intentionally to award contracts to a higher priced, favored vendor under the guise of better quality. The fourth one is that there is a possibility of collusion, bribery, or kickbacks, where the CFO and the clerks assigned to do the purchase order and the procurement process, the approvals, there could be collusion among them, and also amongst the higher ups if it was done in the bidding process. or in the procurement process that people were incentivized to approve the contracts to these sketchy businesses at questionable value in exchange for kickbacks or bribes. So they could have overstated the amount so that the difference between what is actually needed and what was approved, the money could be split amongst the people who authorized it to go through. Then the fifth and last one would be that as stated in the procurement process, that there is one within a range that requires 3 written quotations. So there is a possibility that the getting of those quotations may have been bypassed by probably only providing one quotation. This is to ensure that only one vendor is looked at for approval instead of evaluating and comparing 3, because the 3 are looked at for a range to ensure quality, best price or lowest price, and good service delivery. But if you have nothing to compare them, or if you have nothing to compare on a whole, then you're forced to only approve the one that is in front of you, only one that you see, without having to say, okay, maybe somebody else can offer this for the same price but less time, or for a less price, a better quality, or less price and less time. So those were the risks identified that could have created the fact that these contracts were awarded to these sketchy people, these sketchy businesses.
The bonus question asks, what type of audit would you conduct for BRICS Public Works? Based on the case study presented, a compliance audit would be suitable for BRICS Public Works to determine whether contracts are awarded in accordance with BRICS district procurement policy. This type of audit focuses on whether a particular subject matter is in compliance with authorities.